Hello, English learners. In this story, you will follow Nancy, a 26-year-old woman who loves to travel. She likes to see new places, try local food, and meet people from around the world. Today, Nancy is going on a trip to a beautiful city, Paris, France. She will explore the streets, visit famous places, and enjoy many small happy moments. This story is told in simple English. It is perfect for English learners at level A1 or A2. You will learn new words, useful sentences, and enjoy a peaceful travel story step by step. Now, take a deep breath, relax. Let's travel to Paris with Nancy. The dream begins. Nancy was sitting by the window in her small, cozy apartment. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon. A soft breeze came through the window, and the sound of birds made her smile. She held a warm cup of tea in her hands and looked at her phone. On the screen, there were photos of Paris. Beautiful buildings, narrow streets, the Eiffel Tower shining under the blue sky. She slowly scrolled down, looking at each photo with wonder. A picture of a girl drinking coffee at a small cafe made her stop. Nancy imagined herself sitting there, watching people walk by, hearing the sound of French words in the air. Her heart felt warm. "I want to go to Paris," she whispered to herself. Nancy had always loved to travel. She liked to see new places, try new food, and meet different people. She had been to beaches, mountains, and big cities, but never to Paris. For her, Paris was special. It was romantic, quiet, and full of charm. Later that evening, she sat down with her laptop and opened a flight website. She found a flight from New York to Paris next month. She looked at the calendar and smiled. "Spring in Paris sounds perfect," she said to herself. The screen showed many flight options. Some were too expensive, and some were at strange times. But after a few minutes, she found a flight that looked just right. It was a direct flight in the morning, and the price was good. The next morning, she went to a small travel shop near her apartment. She needed a suitcase. "Can I help you?" the shopkeeper asked. "Yes," Nancy said with a smile. "I'm going to Paris. I need a small suitcase, light and easy to carry." "Oh, Paris," the woman said kindly. "How exciting! This one is perfect." Nancy chose a dark blue suitcase with small wheels. She touched the handle. It felt just right. Back home, she placed the suitcase in the corner of her room. She looked at it with a warm smile, thinking about all the things she still had to do before the trip. She needed to pack her clothes, print her flight ticket, and learn a few simple French words like hello and thank you. The journey had already begun, and it felt like something beautiful was waiting for her. At the airport, the day of the trip finally came. Nancy woke up early, even before her alarm rang. The sky outside was still dark, but her room was filled with a soft, quiet feeling. She felt a little nervous, but also excited. Today, she was going to Paris. She got dressed, ate a quick breakfast, and checked her suitcase one last time. Everything was ready: her clothes, her passport, her ticket, and a small book of French phrases. At 6 a.m., her taxi arrived. The driver helped her put the suitcase in the trunk. "Where to?" he asked. "To the airport, please," Nancy said, smiling. As the taxi drove through the quiet city streets, Nancy looked out the window. The buildings looked sleepy in the morning light. She held her phone in her hands and took a deep breath. When she arrived at the airport, she felt the busy energy around her. People were walking quickly, some pulling suitcases, others hugging family members. Nancy took her suitcase and walked to the check-in counter. "Good morning," said the airline staff. "Where are you flying today?" "To Paris," Nancy replied, handing over her passport. The woman smiled. "Wonderful. Do you have any luggage to check in?" "Yes, just one suitcase." After a few minutes, Nancy received her boarding pass. She thanked the woman and made her way to the security check. The line was long, but she didn't mind. She watched the people around her. Some were tired, some were excited like her. She placed her bag and jacket into the tray, took off her shoes, and walked through the scanner. Everything was fine. After security, she found her gate and sat down by a big window. Outside, she could see the airplanes lined up on the runway. She checked the screen. Her flight to Paris was on time. Soon, a voice spoke through the loudspeakers. "Flight 312 to Paris is now boarding at Gate 8. Nancy stood up, her heart beating faster. She walked to the gate, showed her boarding pass, and smiled at the flight attendant. "Have a nice flight," the woman said kindly. "Thank you," Nancy replied. She walked down the jet bridge and stepped into the plane. The seat by the window was hers. She put her backpack under the seat and looked outside. The sky was turning light blue. As the plane began to move, Nancy whispered to herself, "Next stop, Paris." And then the plane took off into the sky. Check-in at the hotel. After a long flight, the plane landed gently in Paris. The sky was gray, but the air felt fresh and cool. Nancy looked out of the window and smiled. She had really arrived. Inside the airport, everything felt big and busy. Nancy followed the signs for baggage claim and waited for her suitcase. When she saw the dark blue suitcase with small wheels, she felt a small wave of relief. Everything was going well. Outside the airport, she found a taxi. The driver was an older man with kind eyes. "Bonjour, mademoiselle," he said. "Hello," Nancy replied with a smile. "To Hotel Lumière, near the Eiffel Tower, please." The man nodded and helped her with her bag. As the taxi moved through the city, Nancy looked out the window with wide eyes. Paris was beautiful. She saw little cafes on corners, people walking with fresh bread in hand, and flowers on windowsills. Even the buildings looked soft and elegant. After about 40 minutes, the taxi stopped in front of a small hotel with a golden sign that said, Hotel Lumière. Here we are, the driver said. Thank you very much, Nancy said. She gave him the money and added, Merci. She pulled her suitcase through the glass doors. Inside, the hotel was quiet and warm. The lights were soft, and there was soft music playing in the background. A young woman stood behind the front desk. Bonjour. Welcome to Hotel Lumière. Do you have a reservation? The woman asked politely. Yes, Nancy said. My name is Nancy White. I booked a room for 3 nights. One moment, please, the woman said, as she typed on the computer. Then she smiled. Yes, here it is. Room 305. Here is your key card. The elevator is to your left. Thank you, Nancy said, taking the card. She took the small elevator up to the 3rd floor. Her room was at the end of the hallway. When she opened the door, she gasped softly. The room was small but beautiful. There was a big window with white curtains, a soft bed with clean sheets, and a small desk with a flower in a glass. Nancy put her suitcase down and walked to the window. She pulled back the curtain and smiled. From the window, she could see the top of the Eiffel Tower in the distance. I'm really in Paris, she whispered. She sat on the bed, tired but happy. The room felt quiet, safe, and warm. After a few deep breaths, she lay back and closed her eyes, thinking about what she would explore tomorrow. Goes to the Eiffel Tower. The next morning, Nancy woke up early. The room was quiet, and soft light came through the window. She stretched her arms and smiled. Today, she was going to visit the Eiffel Tower. She got dressed and put on her favorite scarf. The weather was cool, but not too cold. She packed her phone, a small map, and her wallet into a crossbody bag. Before leaving the room, she looked at the Eiffel Tower from her window again. This time, she would see it up close. Nancy walked out of the hotel and followed the street signs. The sky was light blue, and the air smelled like fresh bread and flowers. People passed by her, some walking to work, others holding coffee cups or walking dogs. Nancy smiled at everything. After a short walk, she turned a corner and suddenly stopped. There it was. The Eiffel Tower stood tall and beautiful in front of her. It looked even bigger than in the pictures. The metal shone softly in the morning light, and small birds flew around it. Nancy's heart felt full. Wow, she whispered. It's even more beautiful in real life. She walked closer and stood in line for tickets. A man in a blue uniform smiled at her. "One ticket to the top, please," she said. "Of course. Here you go." Enjoy your visit, he replied. Nancy held the ticket in her hand like a little treasure. She waited for the elevator with a group of other visitors. When it arrived, they all stepped inside. The elevator moved slowly up, and Nancy looked out through the glass. The city below was wide and full of life. When she reached the top, she stepped out and walked to the edge. The wind touched her face gently. She looked out and saw the whole city: rivers, rooftops, trees, and small cars like toys. She took a deep breath. This is magic, she thought. She took a few photos, but then she put her phone away. She just wanted to enjoy the moment. Her hands rested on the railing, and her eyes stayed on the horizon. After a while, she bought a small keychain with a little Eiffel Tower charm at the gift shop. It would remind her of this perfect morning. As she took the elevator back down, she smiled to herself. I'll never forget this day, she thought. A rainy afternoon. After her visit to the Eiffel Tower, Nancy walked through the streets of Paris. Her heart felt light, and she couldn't stop smiling. She stopped at a small cafe and ordered a warm croissant and a cup of hot chocolate. She sat outside under a little umbrella and watched people walk by. Suddenly, dark clouds covered the sky. The light changed, and a few drops of rain fell onto the table. "Oh no," Nancy said softly, looking up. The waiter came and smiled. "Would you like to sit inside, mademoiselle?" "Yes, thank you," she replied. Inside the cafe, it was warm and quiet. Soft music played, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. Nancy sat near the window and watched the rain fall gently on the street. People opened umbrellas and walked quickly. Some couples stopped to kiss in the rain. It all felt like a movie. After her drink, Nancy put on her coat and opened her umbrella. She didn't want to stay inside all day. She wanted to walk by the Seine River, even in the rain. With small, careful steps, she made her way to the riverside. The water looked calm and silver under the gray sky. Boats moved slowly, and the raindrops made little circles on the surface. Nancy stood still for a moment, just watching. She saw an old man painting near the river. His canvas showed the Eiffel Tower with soft colors. She smiled and whispered, "Paris is beautiful, even in the rain." As she walked, she saw a small bookshop by the water. She went inside to stay dry. The shop was quiet and full of old books. A black cat slept on a chair in the corner. Nancy picked up a little book with French poems. She couldn't read them all, but the words looked pretty on the page. She bought the book and left the shop with a warm heart. When she returned to her hotel later that day, her shoes were a little wet, but her smile was bright. She changed into dry clothes and sat by the window with a cup of tea. The rain still fell outside, but Nancy didn't mind. "This is the Paris I dreamed of," she thought. Exploring Montmartre. The next morning, the sky was clear again. The rain had stopped, and the sun was shining softly over the rooftops of Paris. Nancy felt happy and ready for a new adventure. Today, she planned to visit Montmartre, a famous hill in the north of Paris, known for art, music, and beautiful streets. She took the metro from her hotel. It was busy, but easy to follow. After a few stops, she arrived at the station. As she walked out, she looked around with wide eyes. The streets were full of color and charm. Montmartre felt different from the rest of Paris. The buildings were small and sweet, with red roofs and green vines. Painters were everywhere, sitting on corners with brushes and easels. Some painted the street, some painted people. Nancy smiled as she passed by them. She walked slowly up a hill. It was a little steep, but she didn't mind. Every corner had something new: a cafe, a flower shop, or a small bakery. She stopped for a moment to buy a small tart with strawberries on top. Delicious, she said, softly as she ate. At the top of the hill, she saw a large white church. It was called Sacré-Cœur. The steps in front of it were full of people, some taking pictures, some just sitting and enjoying the view. Nancy climbed the steps slowly. When she reached the top, she turned around. The view was amazing. From up there, she could see almost all of Paris. The buildings stretched far into the distance, and the Eiffel Tower stood proudly on the horizon. A soft wind touched her hair. She sat on the steps and took out her little notebook. She wrote, "Montmartre is like a painting. I feel peaceful here." Next to her, a young man played the guitar and sang in French. His music was gentle and sweet. Nancy closed her eyes for a moment and just listened. After some time, she walked through the narrow streets behind the church. She saw small art galleries and shops selling handmade gifts. One painter asked, "Would you like a quick portrait?" Nancy laughed. "Maybe next time," she said kindly. She bought a tiny watercolor painting of Montmartre to take home. It showed the hill, the church, and little people walking around, just like she had seen. As the sun started to go down, the light turned golden. Nancy walked slowly back to the metro station, her heart full. Montmartre is a place I'll always remember, she thought. The hop-on, hop-off bus. That afternoon, the sky was bright and clear. A few white clouds floated slowly above the city. Nancy stood near a big roundabout close to the Eiffel Tower. She saw a large red bus with an open top and colorful pictures of famous places on the side. The words on the front said, "Hop on, hop off Paris tour." The bus looked fun and cheerful. People were getting on with smiles and cameras. Some children were pointing up at the roof. Nancy smiled to herself. This is the perfect way to see more of Paris, she thought. She walked to a small ticket booth near the bus. "Hello," she said kindly. "One ticket for the bus tour, please." "Of course," said the man. "It's good for 24 hours. You can get on and off at any stop." He gave her a paper ticket, a small city map, and a pair of earphones. "You can listen to the audio guide during the ride," he added. "Many languages are available." Nancy thanked him and climbed up to the top deck. The seats were open to the sky, and the wind felt soft on her face. She sat near the front and plugged in her earphones. The bus began to move slowly through the Paris streets. In her ears, a calm voice began to speak. "Welcome to Paris. On your left is the River Seine. To your right, you see the Musée d'Orsay, once a train station, now a famous art museum." The bus continued down the wide streets. They passed cafes with people sitting outside, drinking coffee and talking. Waiters in white shirts carried trays of drinks with one hand. The smell of fresh bread and roasted coffee filled the air. "Everything looks like a painting," Nancy thought. At one stop, Nancy decided to get off near a large garden. It was the Tuileries garden, full of green trees, flowers, and small fountains. Children were playing, and people sat on green chairs, reading books or just relaxing. Nancy took a short walk, bought a cold bottle of water, and enjoyed the peaceful moment. A little girl gave her a smile, and Nancy smiled back. After a while, she returned to the bus stop and got on the next red bus. The city looked different now, with golden light from the afternoon sun. Shadows were long, and the rooftops looked soft and pink. Nancy felt calm, happy, and full of wonder. When the ride ended, she kept her ticket and folded the little map carefully. She would take it home, a reminder of her journey through the heart of Paris. Goodbye, Paris. Nancy woke up early on her last morning in Paris. The room was quiet. Soft light came through the white curtains. Outside the window, the sky was pale blue, and the top of the Eiffel Tower still stood, proudly in the distance. She sat up in bed and looked around the room. Her suitcase was ready by the door. Everything was packed, but her heart felt full. She made a cup of tea and sat by the window one last time. Down on the street, she saw people walking to work, a man riding a bicycle, and a woman buying flowers at the corner shop. Paris was waking up. Nancy smiled to herself. "I will miss this city," she whispered. After breakfast, she checked out of the hotel. The woman at the front desk gave her a warm smile. "Did you enjoy your stay?" she asked. "Yes, very much," Nancy replied. "Paris is beautiful." "Bon voyage," the woman said kindly. Outside, Nancy got into a taxi. The driver greeted her with a friendly "bonjour," then helped her with her suitcase. As the taxi drove through the city, Nancy looked out the window. She passed by cafes, flower shops, bakeries, and quiet streets she had walked just days before. The buildings looked golden in the morning sun. They crossed the Seine River. The water sparkled, and boats moved slowly beneath the bridges. I will come back one day, she thought. At the airport, everything felt fast and busy. Nancy checked in, went through security, and found her gate. She sat by the window and looked at the planes outside. When it was time to board, she took one last deep breath. "Goodbye, Paris," she said softly. "Thank you for everything." On the plane, she looked out the window as the city grew smaller and smaller. The Eiffel Tower was just a tiny line now, and soon it disappeared into the clouds. Nancy closed her eyes and smiled. In her bag were souvenirs, photos, and a little notebook full of memories. But in her heart, she carried something more, the feeling of Paris. Thank you for joining Nancy on her trip to Paris. Nancy saw beautiful places, met kind people, and made special memories. She learned new things, tried new food, and felt the magic of Paris. Now it's your turn. Listen to the story again. Practice reading the words. Try saying the sentences out loud. You can find the full story in the PDF file linked in the description below. Read it anytime, at home, on the bus, or before bed. Learning English is like a journey. Step by step, you will go far. Keep listening, keep reading, and enjoy the adventure. See you in the next story.